Picture this: a hemicycle chamber in Strasbourg, France, where 720 elected representatives from 27 countries debate the future of 450 million people. They speak in 24 different languages, represent political traditions from Portuguese socialists to Polish conservatives, and somehow must find common ground on everything from climate policy to digital regulation. This is the European Parliament, the world's only directly elected transnational legislature, and it's far more powerful than most people realize. But here's the paradox. Despite being one of the most consequential democratic institutions on Earth, the European Parliament remains deeply misunderstood. Critics dismiss it as a talking shop, a rubber stamp for decisions made elsewhere. Supporters hail it as the democratic heart of Europe. The reality, as always, is more complex and more interesting. So, how does the European Parliament really work? What power does it actually wield? And why does it matter whether you live in Helsinki or Athens, Dublin or Bucharest? The European Parliament didn't begin with the powers it has today. When it first convened in 1952 as the Common Assembly of the European Coal and Steel Community, it was little more than a consultative body with no real authority. Direct elections began only in 1979. Even then, the Parliament's role was limited, its opinions often ignored by the more powerful Council of Ministers and the European Commission. What changed everything was a series of treaty reforms. The Maastricht Treaty in 1992 gave it the power to approve or reject the European Commission. The Amsterdam Treaty in 1997 extended its legislative reach. The Lisbon Treaty in 2009 made it a genuine co-legislator with the Council on almost all EU laws. Today's Parliament would be unrecognizable to those early delegates. So, what does that power look like in practice? The Parliament has three core functions. First, it shares legislative authority with the Council of the European Union. Under the ordinary legislative procedure, both institutions must agree on the text of a law before it can pass. The Parliament can amend, reject, or approve legislation on issues ranging from consumer protection to environmental standards. In 2006, the Parliament forced such extensive changes to the Controversial Services Directive that it fundamentally altered the proposal's character. Second, the Parliament controls the EU budget jointly with the Council. Every euro spent by the European Union requires parliamentary approval. In 1999, the Parliament refused to approve the EU budget over allegations of fraud and mismanagement, a crisis that led directly to the resignation of the entire Santer Commission. It was the first time a commission had been forced to resign, establishing the Parliament's credibility as a serious check on executive power. Third, the Parliament holds the European Commission accountable. It elects the Commission President, approves each individual commissioner after public hearings, and retains the nuclear option. A two-thirds majority can force the entire Commission to resign. This power has never been formally used, but the threat alone has proven effective. Understanding the Parliament's formal powers is only half the story. To grasp how it really works, you need to understand its internal structure. MEPs don't sit by nationality, but organize into transnational political groups based on ideology. After the 2024 elections, the largest group is the European People's Party with 188 members, followed by the Socialists and Democrats with 136 seats, Patriots for Europe with 85, the European Conservatives and Reformists with 79, Renew Europe with 75, the Greens with 53, and the Left with 46. What's crucial to understand is that no single group has ever held a majority. This forces coalition building on every significant vote. For decades, the dominant pattern was a grand coalition between the EPP and the Socialists and Democrats. But the 2024 elections disrupted this arrangement. The traditional centre lost their combined majority, forcing them to bring in the Liberals or Greens to reach the threshold. The European Parliament cannot initiate legislation on its own. That right belongs to the European Commission. Once the Commission proposes a law, it goes to the relevant parliamentary committee. A rapporteur is appointed to guide the proposal through Parliament, drafting amendments and building consensus. After the committee stage, the proposal moves to a plenary session for a first reading vote. If Parliament and Council disagree, the process continues through second readings and potentially a conciliation committee. In practice, most legislation is now agreed at first reading through informal trilogue meetings, where Parliament, Council and Commission representatives negotiate compromise texts. This speeds up the process, but has drawn criticism for lack of transparency. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. The Parliament has 2 seats. The official seat is Strasbourg, where 12 plenary sessions are held annually. But most committee work happens in Brussels. The Parliament's Secretariat is in Luxembourg. This costs over €100 million annually and generates thousands of tons of carbon emissions. Why this absurdity? Strasbourg was chosen as a symbol of Franco-German reconciliation. France insists on maintaining it, and changing it requires unanimous agreement from all member states. Most MEPs would prefer a single seat in Brussels, but national politics trumps parliamentary preference. The 720 MEPs come from vastly different backgrounds and linguistic traditions. Every MEP has the right to speak in any of the EU's 24 official languages. Around 350 full-time interpreters and 400 freelancers work to ensure real-time understanding across languages. This commitment to multilingualism is expensive and complex, but fundamental to the Parliament's legitimacy. The Parliament's growing power has made it a target for corruption. The Qatargate scandal that erupted in 2022 exposed how foreign governments allegedly bribed MEPs to influence policy. Belgian police seized $1.5 million in cash, and several MEPs were charged. The scandal led to tightened ethics rules in 2023, including asset declarations and lobbying restrictions. However, critics argue the reforms don't go far enough. Despite these challenges, the Parliament has become increasingly assertive. It blocked commissioner nominees it deemed unsuitable. It forced the withdrawal of controversial legislation. When the Commission proposed Ursula von der Leyen for a second term in 2024, the Parliament elected her, but only narrowly, showing both its power and its limits. The Parliament's influence extends beyond formal powers. As the only directly elected EU institution, it claims unique democratic legitimacy. This gives it moral authority in debates about the EU's direction, allowing it to shape discussions on climate change, digital rights, and migration policy. But legitimacy requires participation. Turnout in European elections has historically been low, declining from 62% in 1979 to 43% in 2014. The 2019 and 2024 elections saw recovery to around 51%, but these figures still lag behind most national elections. Many Europeans don't know their MEPs or understand what the Parliament does. Part of the problem is structural. European elections are fought primarily on national issues by national parties using national media. The Parliament has tried to Europeanize elections through the Spitzenkandidat process, but implementation has been inconsistent. Looking forward, the European Parliament faces fundamental questions. As the EU grapples with challenges from climate change to geopolitical competition, the Parliament's ability to shape responses will be tested. The rise of Eurosceptic parties creates internal tensions and can paralyze decision-making. At the same time, there are calls for the Parliament to gain more power, particularly the right to initiate legislation. What's clear is that the European Parliament matters more than ever. In an era when democracy faces global challenges, the Parliament represents an experiment in transnational democratic governance. It's messy, complicated, and imperfect. It operates in multiple languages, across multiple cities, balancing multiple national interests. It's expensive, sometimes corrupt, and often frustratingly opaque. But it's also the only place where elected representatives from across Europe come together to debate and decide on laws affecting hundreds of millions. Understanding how the Parliament works, its powers and limitations, achievements and failures, is essential to understanding modern Europe. Whether you believe the EU should be strengthened or reformed, the Parliament is where those debates play out democratically. It's where a Polish farmer's concerns meet a Dutch environmentalist's push for climate action, where a French socialist's vision confronts a German liberal's fiscal discipline, where competing visions of Europe's future are tested. The European Parliament is far from perfect, but in a world where authoritarian models are gaining ground and democratic norms are under pressure, it represents something valuable. The belief that people from different nations, speaking different languages, holding different values, can come together to govern themselves democratically. That's an experiment worth understanding, worth scrutinizing, and perhaps worth defending. The question isn't whether the European Parliament is flawed. It is. The question is whether, despite those flaws, it serves a purpose that matters. And on that question, the evidence suggests it does. If this deep dive into the inner workings of the European Parliament has enlightened you, or if it's raised new questions, I'd love to hear your perspective. Do you think the Parliament should have more powers? Is the two-seat system an important symbol or an absurd waste? Have you ever voted in European elections? And if not, what's holding you back? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to keep exploring the institutions that shape our world, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any future analysis. Because understanding how power actually works is the first step to becoming a truly informed citizen.